बिस्मिल्लाहिर्रहमानिर्रहीम। आज का जो प्रोग्राम है वो एक स्पेशल एपिसोड है। कम्युनिटी की रिक्वेस्ट पे हमने अरेंज की है। लास्ट वीक हमने डॉक्टर इब्राहिम खान के साथ, जो कि पब्लिक हेल्थ फिजिशियन है, रेजाइना से प्रोग्राम किया था। फिर इन्होंने किसी और प्रोग्राम में जाना था, लेकिन कम्युनिटी ने कहा कि हमारे पास बहुत क्वेश्चन रह गए थे और उन्होंने लाइव भी आना था कम्युनिटी ने। तो ये जो प्रोग्राम है हमने 3 लैंग्वेजेस में स्पेशली ऑर्गेनाइज की है, पश्तो, उर्दू एंड इंग्लिश। कम्युनिटी के मेंबर जब चाहे ज्वाइन कर सकते हैं और क्वेश्चन पश्तो में पूछे या उर्दू में पूछे, इंग्लिश में तो हमने जवाब मिलेगा उसको उसी लैंग्वेज में। तो सजाद भाई और मायरा दोनों होस्ट है, मैं मॉडरेट करूंगा और ये दोनों क्वेश्चन वगैरह जो है ना डॉक्टर साहब से पूछेंगे। तो सजाद भाई आप स्टार्ट करें और फिर मायरा से पूछूंगा कि कोई क्वेश्चन पूछे।
Shukriya, Dr. Manan Sahib. Thank you very much, Dr. Ibrahim and Myra Malik, that we are just fortunate that Dr. Ibrahim has joined us. Alhamdulillah, he's a great expert in this field. So actually, let me summarize a little bit of what our last episode there is a noise in the background. Can you please mute your Dr. Manan, can you please mute your mic? Yeah. Okay, so let me just summarize briefly. So what Dr. Ibrahim Khan said last time, actually, he emphasized a lot on the vaccination and the booster doses, and he also mentioned some spiritual values as well. Some supplementation is also, like he mentioned, that supplementation can be very useful. And he was talking about the monoclonal antibody therapy, and we know that monoclonal antibody therapy can be used, and actually these antibodies, they are created in the lab, and they mimic antibodies that can neutralize the coronavirus. So that was the last thing that Dr. Ibrahim Khan was just mentioning, and then he has to leave the program to join the another channel. So, Dr. Ibrahim, I would like to ask you a question that what is the current status of monoclonal antibody therapy, and can you please elaborate a little bit on its efficacy and its availability in Canada, and how effective it is for the sick people, because it is used for the sick people as compared to the vaccination, which is used for the healthy people. So please, your take on this. Your mic.
السلام علیکم ټول ته ډیره مننه او ډیر خپل ماخام چې تاسو ارګنایز کړی دی. مایرا او ډاکټر منان او سجاد ټول ته ډیر سلامونه. تاسو اډینس ته ډیر خپل ماخامه او سلامونه قبول شي. ډیر خپل questions last time او hopefully چې موږ په دې conversation کې some of the remaining questions we will answer them. خو بس اول خو مې دا وی چې ډیره مننه د opportunity چې تاسو سره بنده خبره کول شي او دا question answer کول شي او any question is a good question and any question is welcome. باقي د تاسو د question ته response کول نه مخکې یو دا خبره کوم چې زما زیاتره responses او answers با general advice په شکل کې دا غي به دا مطلب نه چې it's not an authority for anyone to go and do those things, but it will be just a general advice. او بل دا چې تاسو ته پته هر یو province کې rules and regulation لګ بل شانتي دي د COVID protocol نسبت البرټا دغه شانتي Quebec ډیر بل شانتي بنسبت Manitoba Saskatchewan. Now keep that in mind that my advice is subject to your local health system and your local protocols in each province. So there are difference, but please keep that in mind. What I say here may not be applicable in your province, and your province approach will be a little bit different. So keep that in mind. Hopefully, my impression is that I can speak and respond in any language, like a Pakhtun, Urdu, English. Or if you want my response in a particular language, please indicate that to me, so that I can respond to you in Pashto or in Urdu or in English. I can speak German too, by the way. So I can respond to that. So first of all, the Chitarsupore, as far as the treatment and therapeutics are concerned for COVID or Omicron, there has been significant developments in terms of therapeutics. اول خو مونږ ته دا پته نه و چې دا وایرس څنګه دی، دا وایرس څنګه سپریډ کیږي.
Dr. Sab, say it in English or in Urdu so the bigger community can understand it. And particularly Myra is sitting with us. She has little bit difficulties in.
Yeah. Sure. Okay. So, first of all, since the pandemic was declared globally, we had a hard time. Actually, we didn't know anything about this virus. So everything we knew, we learned it either by experience or the research. And the research also was pretty negligible in the beginning. And the research went on as we moved in the pandemics from the first wave to the second wave. Now we're in the fifth wave. So I think the science has been changing quite a lot. And initially, we didn't know that we will have the vaccine for this to battle this or to combat this virus. So I think everything we did in the beginning was based on what we knew and what was available in terms of prevention. So we thought, if you guys would recall the messages that we give in the first wave and compare that to the messages we give in the fifth wave are way different. Initially, there was no indication that we will be providing masks, that we will direct public to wear masks in different settings. Initially, we thought, well, just in the hospital setting, perhaps people need to wear a mask. But then it took a while to recommend public masking for everybody. So I think in that sense, everything has been changing, and so has been the therapeutic. Therapeutic just came in the last 1 year or 6 months, and there are more and more therapeutics coming in the basket of care. So currently we have a number of good things. So first of all, I want to say that before you think of monoclonal antibodies or you think of antivirals, particularly in Canada, was approved last week, particularly the Paxlovid, and I just sent you a slide on that. You can certainly share that with your group. So the antivirals addition to the basket of care was just recent, like last week, and it was approved a little earlier by FDA in the US, but Health Canada approved it last week. So in terms of basket, in terms of therapeutic basket of care, we have a bunch of really good things. But one thing I must say that vaccine is the best. Vaccine is the best and the only way to protect yourself, to protect your family from COVID-19. Of course, these are really positive development, and a lot of people will benefit from these monoclonal antibodies and antivirals. There is no doubt about that. But I just wanted to say that the choice of which therapeutic you go for is in the hands of a doctor. Okay, so you would have to talk to your doctor. And in each province, there is a health line. I'm sure in Ontario, there is a health line, and there are ways to get to the pharmacy and to the doctor. They would do a careful assessment of your condition. So basically, monoclonal antibody will be perhaps the last option in the basket of care. So first of all, we would suggest you should get the vaccine and get your vaccine for the entire family. And not just 2 doses, you have to have the booster doses, and the evidence on the booster dose, we talked about it in the last show, that is very good. And booster does provide you good protection, 70 to 80% protection from Omicron. So that is the number one weapon we have in our hands to combat COVID. So the vaccine is the best. And there is no alternative, there is no substitute, and there is no other replacement for a vaccine. So that is number one. Number two, so when people are either vaccinated or unvaccinated, that is number one. People who are immunocompromised and have certain conditions. And certainly these therapeutics are given with a very strict precautions and with a very strict recommendation and review before it's prescribed to anyone. So for example, I send you a slide about the monoclonal antibodies. The monoclonal antibodies are lab-based antibodies. These are made in a factory. And then they are packaged in a fluid format given to a patient in a hospital. So you cannot go to a pharmacist and say, give me a bag of monoclonal. No, you have to be admitted. You have to be in a hospital. You have to first go through a very strict review by the doctor to see whether you would benefit from this. So certainly there are benefits, but the benefits are for certain people more than others. So that is one assessment that needs to happen. So these monoclonal antibodies are available, and the doctors can prescribe that in Canada based on certain conditions. And there's very strict criteria. And so is antiviral. So antivirals, as I mentioned, was approved last week. 5-day treatment, twice a day. But there is a very strict criteria who is going to get it. And initially, Canada has some limited stockpile. So not everybody who will go to the pharmacy and get it like a Halloween candy, it won't be like that. So I just wanted to manage your expectation that it won't be like that. It's not going to be like a Halloween candy and you go and get it and take it. So there is a very strict criteria. For example, if you have liver condition, kidney condition, heart condition, and you are on certain medication, then that medication is not for you. So that's why it's very important that, first of all, you need to know what it is, what sort of options you have as a patient or as a community member. If you're worried about your elderly people or in a family, so you need to know that those information are good to know that those options are there, and you can really ask your doctor. And don't be shy to ask your doctor whether I'm qualified for antivirals, whether I'm qualified for monoclonal antibodies, and those sort of therapeutics. So certainly a good conversation with your doctor is really good, especially if you haven't received a vaccine and you're symptomatic. These treatment needs to happen in certain conditions. For example, the antiviral treatment has to be initiated within the 48 hours to 3-4 days. And if it doesn't happen, then the benefits are less and less. And certainly the doctor would have to really get a lot of information from you. You just cannot go, well, I want antivirals right now. I'm going somewhere, I have a risk, and I want to packet that in my wallet that I can use it in case I get symptoms. No, it won't be like that. It may become like that maybe later this year. But for now, it's a very limited stockpile. And the doctor has to review your entire profile, like, your previous history. Your drug-to-drug interaction is a very, very critical things here. So if you ask for it, they would have to have a lot of details from you, whether they should prescribe that for you or not. So these are good things that we have in the basket of care, but just keep in mind that not everybody would be eligible for that. And if somebody is eligible, they would have to go through certain criteria. And then when you fulfill that criteria, it will be prescribed to you. You can go to a pharmacy, get it, bring it home, and take it like the way you take an antibiotic.
Okay, डॉक्टर साहब, 2 कम्युनिटी के मेंबर ने ज्वाइन की है, तो मैं उनको इन करता हूं और लेट्स सी व्हाट दे आस्किंग फॉर. ओके, जस्ट होल्ड अ मिनट. ओके, मोस्ट वेलकम. ये 2 कम्युनिटी के मेंबर हैं, इन्होंने इनके कोई क्वेश्चन है, तो आप पहले अपने नाम बताएं और जगह बताएं कहां से हैं, और फिर डॉक्टर साहब से आप सवाल कर सकते हैं. पहले आप अपना नाम बताएं और किस जगह से आप बात कर रहे हैं.
मैं स्टार्ट कर लेती हूँ. अस्सलाम वालेकुम. My name is Myra and I'm from Brampton, Ontario. And I have some questions for Dr. Saab regarding COVID.
Please go ahead. Yeah.
Okay. I was thinking that do you think that isn't it a high time for Canada to treat COVID like a flu? Well, the reason why I'm saying that, like UK has started doing that, Spain is doing that too, and Malaysia has also started doing that. So do you think it's a high time to treat COVID as a flu, or no, it should be treated on a different level as we've been seeing it for the last 2 years? This is my one part of the question.
Yeah. Okay.
So should I ask my second question right now?
Yeah. Go ahead.
All right. So my second question is, I was just reading Yale University research. It's not published yet, though, but they were saying that mild COVID symptoms could lead to a brain damage or brain-related concerns. I would like to take something from you on that, like the expert advice on that. Like, is it true? Because I'm mild COVID symptom patient. That's all.
Okay, thank you so much, Myra, for your questions, and I hope I will answer them. So question number 1, you are, based on the question number 1, you are really, really thinking ahead and maybe even ahead of researchers. So before I joined this call, I just sent an article to this group. It's published in Lancet on the 20th, I think just last week. So it's a very good article And you guys know Lancet is one of the most popular medical journal and scientific journals. It's when something is published in Lancet, we really take it as like, you know, a credible evidence. So first of all, how should we treat COVID currently? So that article that I just sent to Dr. Manan and Dr. Sajjad actually should be circulated to this entire group. It basically tells you what is going to happen. I mean, it's not a crystal ball, but I think there is a little bit of prediction and futuristic thinking what's going to happen. We knew from the very beginning that at some point, once we have the basket of all these therapeutics and the basket of vaccines, we have a very powerful vaccine. We knew that with the vaccine development, mRNA vaccine, and now antivirals, and we just talked about monoclonal antibodies, these are really, really good things. And now we know so much about COVID. So if you would recall, in the beginning of the pandemic, we said 14 days is your isolation, then 10 days, then 7 days, now 5 days. And don't be surprised that it will just maybe in a couple of months, it will become like a flu-like illness. And you just heard, I think last night we heard from Dr. Bonnie Henry. Dr. Bonnie Henry is the Chief Medical Officer of BC. And she did say, she had a press conference last night, and she did say that BC is going ahead and they will not be doing any contact tracing. They will deal it like a flu. And so that is already happening. Some provinces are going ahead and will be announcing that they will deal with like a flu-like illness, because we have the good vaccine for it. We have a lot of good therapeutics for it. So that transition has already started from pandemic to endemic stage. Also, people have lots of good knowledge about it and experience about it. Almost everybody, I think, got COVID already. So people are used to masking now. It was hard to put mask on people in the beginning. Now people are used to masking. People know what to do at home. And particularly learning from Omicron, we are seeing that the hospitalization certainly is going up, but the severity of the disease is going down. And also the hospital stay is very short and shorter and shorter. So these are really good signs, and it is taking, some scientists and researchers say that this is the start of the end of this pandemic. So I think that's a very good futuristic thinking, Shumaila, and I think it's going to happen like that, and it will end up like a flu seasonal sort of infection. Yeah. Perhaps one thing we will still do, that we will still keep the ability to have at least follow up on severe cases, because we would not want to miss that case. We still follow up on severe flu cases in children, like under 1 year old. When under 1 year old child get flu and get severe acute respiratory illness and admitted to the hospital, we do investigate those children, or even deaths from flu. We do investigate them very in depth, and we want to know what happened in this flu situation. Was the flu virus more deadly, or what happened, or was there other chronic condition that actually played a role in that? So I think it's coming to that. It will be like a seasonal flu. And I also heard that in Canada till 2024, all of us may get 2 or 3 shots every year till we see really that it has normalized and settled like flu. So that is the answer to question number 1. Question number 2. And it's a very good question. And also, you are ahead of the researcher there too, that people are looking at long-term effects of COVID. So everybody get COVID, get over it. Some get symptoms, some doesn't get symptoms, and some get hospitalized, some doesn't. So I think there is that. But there is I think a researcher group in Quebec, Montreal, and Ontario, which are a little bit ahead from the group in Calgary. So there are really scientists, clinicians that are watching the complication and the side effects of COVID short-term and long-term. And some of the researchers say that the existence of short-term or long-term side effects is more among people who had other chronic conditions before they got COVID. So certainly in high-risk people, there is a brain fog. You may have heard the term brain fog. Like, people have a hard time remembering things after the COVID infection. So there is that. People have a hard time, like their memory is impacted in short term. Some have long-term memory impacts, cognitive cognitive difficulties. Some have motor difficulties, like they can't move, they're fatigued, they can't do to work properly, they can't concentrate properly. So I think this is an emerging research area. And Shamala, maybe if after 1 year, if we talk about this, I would have more information to give you, like what exactly has happened to people with short-term and long-term disabilities.
Okay, thank you Shamira. मरियम आप कहाँ से अपने नाम बताए? आप तो बड़ी यंग लगती है, आप कौन से ग्रेड में हैं? अपनी ग्रेड भी बताइए.
Hello, my name is Ibrahim. Assalamu alaikum. I'm from Calgary and I'm in grade 9. I have 2 questions regarding this pandemic. The first one is why are we calling it Omicron and not flu? Because it's basically, is it the same, or is there a difference between both? And I've heard that once you do a rapid test or get tested, if you have COVID and it's positive, and you keep getting positive for like the next 3 months, is that true? Or that's all my questions.
Okay, very good question, Mariam, and very good question. And this has come up on all the town halls. So I'm really happy to answer on that. So first of all, if you would recall, I don't know whether you may have been very young at that time when we had SARS or we had H1N1 pandemic. It was not long ago that we had H1N1 pandemic. And so if you would recall, or maybe if you have read about it, so if you would recall that pandemic, initially people called it swine flu. And it was very deadly for the industry and for that country. Same when when COVID started, it started in Wuhan, in one of the Chinese province. And then Wuhan was the target of a lot of discrimination and deadly to their industry and even to entire China. So what happened is that whenever the virus originates, that country is blamed. So when Omicron developed or was first diagnosed in South Africa, you have seen or not, South Africa was the subject of a lot of criticism, although they did a good job telling people we have the first case of Omicron. So the country shouldn't be blamed and targeted or discriminated just because they did a good job telling people that we got the first type of this virus. So I think just to avoid that no country is blamed, no ethnicity or no group is blamed, they name the virus now with a name that is not stigmatizing. So that was the reason. There was a Greek word, Omicron, and they put the Greek sort of letter to it so that no country, no ethnicity is being blamed or targeted. And you guys have seen President Trump has been the way he has been targeting Chinese virus. He called it Chinese virus and those sort of things. So just to avoid those sort of connotation and stigmatization, that's why these viruses are named now differently, so that nobody is impacted with that. So that's why it's called Omicron. And why is it not like flu? I think we are getting there, that it is becoming like flu, and that is the evolution of this virus, that, initially it was so deadly and, it was killing people, hospitalizing people quickly. Now, Omicron seems to be a mild infection for a lot of people. The risk of severe infection or death is 19 times higher among people who are not vaccinated. So I think every aspect of research you pick and take, it tells you, well, if you are vaccinated, you are protected, you're good. So I think that is the evolution of that is happening, and we are in the 5th wave, and now we know so much about the virus, and we have a lot of evidence that it's not severe. People recover quickly, and these therapeutics that I mentioned, like the antivirals and all these different precautions we take, like masking, all these things, does protect. So it is getting settled at some point. And as I mentioned, the article in Lancet that I shared with this group, you should read that, Shamila. It's very easy to understand for your age group. You should read at least the summary of that article. It will tell you what is going to happen and what is expected to happen. So I think it will settle like a flu in the coming months. And then hopefully we all pray that we come out of it and have a healthy, normal lives. The question about the rapid antigen test positive and the 90 days, yes, that is true. You have heard correct. So if you do rapid test, and if you are symptomatic, if you do rapid test, sometimes people may come positive, sometimes they may not come positive. I have also heard that sometimes people come negative and then they do it the second day or the third day, they come positive, or the vice versa, or the opposite of that. So I think these sort of situations are possible and it can happen. My advice to you is that whenever you use the rapid test, please use it properly. And there was a recent dialogue in the media about what is the best swab. Do you take it from the nose or do you take it from the throat? Which one is better? Should we take both? Some people say no, it's very ugly, and I'm about to throw up. I just can't even think of it, putting in the nose first and then in the throat, or vice versa. So I think my advice is that follow proper instructions and really go deep a little bit in the nose or in the throat if you are doing one or both separately, as long as you follow the proper precautions. And just keep in mind that symptomatic people are recommended to have a PCR, and asymptomatic people are recommended to have a rapid test. If you get one, and if you want to do it again, we have been telling everybody that this test result is considered in that point of time. If you do it right now, and if you negative, is negative for now, but it doesn't mean that later tonight or tomorrow morning you will not be positive. It's possible that you will be positive. So be prepared for that can change. And also, people viral response also changes. Sometimes people easily combat the infection and they never become positive, and sometimes they can be. But I think if you really want to rule out whether you're truly positive or not, you can do a second time. Rapid test, or you can go for PCR if you develop symptoms. And yes, once somebody become positive, true positive for COVID, they do develop. We call it now. We used to call it operational immunity in the beginning, but now we call it post-infection immunity. So if you are positive in November, and if you do test now, it's very possible that you may still be positive, but it doesn't mean you are infectious. Okay.
मरियम, ये आपके सवालात कोई और सवाल है?
No, not really, but
okay, so thank you so much. So आपकी जवाब मिल गया, आपको डॉक्टर साहब ने जवाब दे दिया. अगर आपको कोई क्वेश्चन हो तो आप हमारे ग्रुप में ऐड कर सकते हैं. डॉक्टर साहब को हम रिक्वेस्ट करेंगे कि आपको रिस्पांस देंगे. ठीक है, थैंक यू सो मच फॉर कमिंग. अभी हमारे साथ कम्युनिटी के 2 रिस्पेक्टेबल मेंबर हैं, तो आप मैं कहूँगा कि अपना नाम बताएं और अपनी जगह बताएं, किधर से आप बोल रहे हैं, और डॉक्टर साहब से आप क्या सवालत करते हैं. आप पश्तो में भी कर सकते हैं, उर्दू में, इंग्लिश में, 3 जुबानों में, कोई सी जुबान आप चूज कर सकते हैं. डॉक्टर साहब जवाब दें 3 जुबान. यस, इरफान. आवाज आ रही है?
We can go ahead with Sakhawat.
Sakhawat.
Assalamu alaikum. जो चीज़ें सखावत खान
वालेकुम डॉक्टर साहब.
इरफान भाई, ये सखावत क्वेश्चन कर रहे हैं, तो उसके बाद फिर आप सवाल करें डॉक्टर साहब से.
मैं सखावत टाउन क्लिफ से कनाडा टोरंटो से मैं
पुख्तू के सवाल के पुख्तू के जवाब
सही दा दगा दलता के टाउन क्लिफ ना सखावत खबर कोमा और द कम्युनिटी एक्टिविस्ट टाउन क्लिफ ना कैनेडियन पाकिस्तानी पुख्तून कम्युनिटी तरफ आजा मा दा तपोस कोलो जी چې नन سبا دا نوې ویریانټ چې ده کنه د کې میجارټي خلک افیکټډ دي کنه میجارټي او ډیرو خلکو دا نه ریلایز کیږي چې آیا دا دما کووډ پازیټیو دی او کنه دی او سیمپټمز ټول سیم وي تقریبا کنه تھروټ مسله وي او کف وي ورته او زکام وي کنه او باډي پین وي. ایون زما خپلم د تقریبا نن یو شل ورځې مخکې شپږ ورځې کنټینیوسلی طبیعت خراب او ما 3 ټایم ټیسټ کړی د خپل ماشومان ته کور کې هغه کووډ کیټونه ورکړي دي نو هغه کې ما 3 ټایم ټیسټ کړی دی او 3 واړه چې هغه نیگیټیو راغلي دي خو زما طبیعت چې دی هغه ډیر ورس او ډیر خراب لکه انتهایی. نو دا لکه څنګه به ریلایز کیږي ځکه چې نن سبا خو بارم کووډ ټیسټونه نه کیږي کنه ډاکټر صاحب. نو دا به څنګه لکه کنفرم کیږي چې آیا دا ما ته کووډ وو یا نو یا څنګه لکه د دې خبرې دغه به څنګه کېږي دا به څنګه علاج کېږي
Good.
لکه ما ته اوسه پورې دا علاج نه ده چې لکه دا ما ته کووډ وو او که نه
صحیح ده بالکل صحیح خبره ده. This is the situation with many people سخاوت. نو اول خبره خو دا ده چې to distinguish whether it's COVID or not, it's very hard till you do the test, okay? And if your test is coming repeatedly negative, it means you don't have COVID. So that's number one. Number two, you always keep in mind, Chilaka, it's not the COVID circulating currently in Canada. There are a lot of other respiratory viruses circulating too. No, kasta COVID negative rashi or repeatedly COVID ke obyam negative rashi, it means that is one documented evidence you don't have COVID. Or kasta tabiyat byam kharabi or sta tabiyat na khakigi. No matlab da de chitata yo bul respiratory infection. There, for example, nansaba dear common non-COVID respiratory infection sisidi. Respiratory syncytial virus there's that common than nansaba common cold there's that like a common as lachi watam huwa agad is that common there. That's sore throat, a bacterial infection is that commonly, or flu is that common. No, tikshwata ho COVID rule out ko. That test ko or start test negative raha. That's good. You're free. Hokata da if you want to still find out why are you still feeling worse and worse, and you're not getting better, then you have to go to maybe see a doctor and maybe do a throat swab. Just to find out whether it's group A streptococcal infection or it's flu and those sort of things. Nowadays, there is a one test that you take one swab and it tests for like at least 6 viruses. So, and for that test, you have to go to a clinic and to go to see a doctor, and they do a viral panel. So that viral panel, if it's not COVID, they will tell you which other virus you got. No, baki kata نن ټیسټ کو او ستا لکه راتلونکي پیر خالی اتوار یا د شورو د ورځې پورې ستا symptoms still persist او خرابېږي ستا طبیعت خرابېږي, you should see a doctor. You should not wait. او بل دا چې you should do COVID again. Sometime COVID takes time to appear and respond by the test. No, دا هم یو کېدای شي خو possibly you don't have COVID, it's something else that you need to find out. And for that, you have to go to the doctor and find out what it is, or especially because I don't want you wait. I would like you see the doctor quickly, go to the nearest emergency room and find out what it is. Especially because test negative with the time is getting better, then it's fine. It's okay. You can take Tylenol, good food, good nutrition, rest. And if you feel better, then that is the end of the story. But if you are getting worse, I don't want you wait.
Okay.
So, question, do you have another question?
No.
Okay.
Question
thank you so much. So there's another person. Who is the next one? He doesn't. I don't know the picture, but is it Tariq? Tariq, do you have any question? Say your name, Tariq.
Assalamu alaikum.
Your name. Where are you from? And ask a question from Dr. Khan.
Assalamu alaikum, Dr. Saibano Tulu. The Tariq Khan Khabarikum, the Margozim, Dr. Ibrahim Sib. Assalamu alaikum. تاسو سره ملاقاتونه شوي دي ساسکیچوان کې او د سی پی پی سی په شیشم ملاقات شوی دی. زه صرف یو سوال کوم ډاکټر صاحب چې دا وایرس مخکې ډیر زورورو اوس لږ کمزوری شو, نو آیا د دې دریم ویو که راځي نو هغه به دینم کمزوري او دې سره پته نه لګي زما بیا نمبر راځي او که نه زما پاکستان ته پروګرام دی نو څه خاص سجیشنز ایڈوایس تاسو راکول شي که پاکستان ته ځو ډیورنګ د ټریول او یا هلته پاکستان کې څه خاص پریکاشنز موږ ته اخیستی شو؟ مهرباني.
Thank you so much, Tariq. Nice to see you. ډېر خوشاله شم چې ته مې ولیدې. پښتو کې جواب درکړم؟
پښتو ښه دی. تاسو ته چې څنګه اسانه وي, تاسو د ټرمینالوجي انګریزي کې نو خیر د انګریزي کې راکړئ.
Okay. دواړو کې به درکړم. That's how is that? Okay. So first of all, the question about how is Omicron weaker or different than the previous variant? Tool viruses is just, I want to tell you first that all viruses, any virus that we know thousands and thousands of viruses in medicine. So all the viruses, and I'll just give you the flu example. The reason we all get every year a new flu vaccine is because the virus is changing. That is the reason we get every year we are asked come to a flu clinic and get the flu vaccine, is because the previous vaccine that you got is not working. And second, the flu virus rapidly change ki kana or har kal neve variant da غیر راځي نو هغه تا چې نن کوم د فلو vaccine ملاو شوی دی او تا ته next year نه ملاويږي ځکه چې هر یو نوې vaccine دا variant matching کوي ٹھیک شو نو مدک شانته د کووید وایرس هم چینج کی کتا خیالو لاست ایئر سمر کې موږ ډیلټا دی ګیما دی او الفا دی دا چینج کیدو دا وایرس دا نمونه مو سره چینج کیدل او هر یو ترانزیشن سره او هر یو چینج سره د وایرس په ویرولنس کې چینج راځي یا ډیر زیات ډیډلی شي یا کم ډیډلی شي یا ډیر خطرناک شي یا کم خطرناک شي یا ډیر سیویر سمپټم پروډوس کوي یا بالکل مایلډ سمپټم دا چینجز ټول وایرسز کې راځي and so is happening in this one too. So initially Delta was very deadly. Now Omicron is 5 to 10 times more infectious, especially in the upper respiratory, or the upper respiratory part of the body. It is 5 to 10 times more infectious and extremely transmissible. خبره پکې دا چې شو کې transmissible د ډیر زیات خو خبره پکې دا چې کوم illness cause کوي هغه mild دی نو دا د changes سره راځي severity کې changes راځي sometime by the way changes a variation in viruses doesn't mean they will become more deadlier and more deadlier. Sometimes they go back and they may be totally milder, sometimes may not cause those severe symptoms. No, this is the reason why Omicron is more infectious but not severe. The vaccine is working against that. No, that is the reason that we are recommending vaccine for people, especially third dose. And it's hard to predict that severity. It's hard, it's impossible. So we go with the flow. Virus that is scanned and genetic makeup iguri, severity that's a normal sort of flow and sequence of investigations. دویم دا چې تا پاکستان ته ځي نو کو پاکستان ته ځي زما برته اول دا درخواست چې اول خو چې څه common illnesses دی په پاکستان کې لکه ملیریا ډیره زیاته را ډینګ فیور ډیر زیات دی ډیر خلکو ته ډینګ فیور کیږي پته مو ته نه لګي ډایګنوزس نشته دی access to diagnosis نشته دی یا که ډایګنوزس یې هغه دومره ګران دی چې خلک افورډ کول نشي نو زما برته دا خیالي چې کوم شومان ځان سره بوزي یا تزي یا داسې چې لکه تاسو په فیملی کې immunocompromise لکه so pregnancy یا immunocompromise یا liver condition kidney conditions دا غي لپاره I would caution you that you are a little bit more careful خپل ډاکټر سره خبرو کې او particularly اوس خو دا antivirals را 15 ورځې کورس دی ما په خیال دا پاکستان کې به موجودي خو سره دا پته نشته چې پاکستان ته دا antivirals رالو کنه I would suggest that if you're going to Pakistan and you still think that you are vulnerable to COVID, take an antiviral dose with you, but talk to your doctor. You cannot get it like that. You have to talk to your doctor. So preventatively or proactively, you can take that and maybe use that. Caution like that come common illness in typhoid fever show, malaria show, the vaccine mashumano to lage zanta mash akpal wife ta or zansara like a protective para antiviral the antimalarial course you say. او دا travel clinic ورکی کنه travel clinic ته چلاړ شي ته the word Pakistan وای نه به دا ټول illnesses راشي بیا به تعالی دغه مطابق دوايي نه درکې ځنه covered by insurance some are not covered by insurance you have to pay out of the pocket.
ډیر مهرباني ډاکټر صاحب.
Thank you sir, thank you. Myra, आपके पास कोई question हो डॉक्टर साहब? Any question?
Sure. Assalamu alaikum, doctor. Very, very helpful information. So, maybe two questions. One is first, there's a football game going on in the background, so it's going to be loud. I have two questions. One is, the booster shot, the third one is still, there's a time lag to get a booking in, but I've started seeing that the fourth booster shot is now being recommended. Do you have to take each of the booster shots? Like, do you have to take the third to get to the fourth, or are they both dealing with different ones? And the second one is more about people who are suffering from COVID. how infectious is the virus on animals or on objects? Let's say if they're sick and they're touching things in the house, and even though they're supposed to quarantine, could they put somebody, a family member or a visitor, at risk by touching those inanimate objects, or can a pet carry it as well? Thank you.
Okay, good question. Thank you so much, Myra. And first of all, the booster doses, the third shot, is very, very critical for everybody, immunocompromised or not. This is very critical. If you really want some good protections to protect yourself from Omicron, third dose is must. And especially for those who are immunocompromised or have certain conditions. The good thing is that vaccine is safe in almost every condition. So please do get that. The fourth dose is not for everybody right now. So the fourth dose, if you're not a senior resident living in a long-term care facility, a personal care home, group home, rehabilitation centers, if you're not that, if you're not 80-year-old, if you're not 70-year-old, if you're not 60-year-old, and if you don't have any other conditions, fourth dose is not for you yet. It may be a normal thing like the way it's in Israel and in the UK. They are giving fourth dose to everybody who has more than 6 months after the third dose. But we're not in Israel, we are in Canada, and we are in a different setting. And as I said in the beginning, that every province is different. So if I say, well, fourth dose is a normal here, it may not be the situation in Ontario. So you need to check that. So fourth dose is currently not for everybody. It may be for some people who has more risk and more time has passed, more than 6 to 9 months after their third dose, and they are living in a group home and they are at risk. So fourth dose may be for those people, but we in Saskatchewan here, we're not, and I haven't seen anyone else going that ahead yet. But fourth dose is coming. I can tell you that. But it's for certain individuals, certain categories of high-risk people. So for us, for all, I mean, I'm not saying I'm young, but all the younger people under 50 should get their third dose and wait for further directions and recommendation from your provincial health authority. Coming to your question about COVID and the risk of infections from pets on hard surfaces. So the virus can survive for a couple of hours to a couple of days on the surface, but it depends what temperature. So it can survive in a hot climate to cold climate. So that's why the importance is that we tell people washing hand is the ultimate solution. So
डॉक्टर साहब इसके साथ मैं एक ऐड करता हूँ, मेरा एक दोस्त है, उसका भी मैसेज आया, इसके साथ मायरे के क्वेश्चंस के साथ ही थोड़ा सा एक एडिशन करता हूँ. वो कह रहा है कि मैं बीमार हूँ, उसकी बेटी भी बीमार है, उसके साथ एक कैट है, बिल्ली, जो उसके साथ बड़ी अटैच है. वो ये कह रहा है कि ये जो कोविड ओमिक्रॉन है वो टेस्ट हुआ है पॉजिटिव, वो कैट को ट्रांसफर हो सकता है कि नहीं हो सकता.
Okay. I'll come to that. Sure. Okay. So I'm just responding to Myra first, and then so the virus can survive on the surface for quite some hours, for some time. So that's why important that you wash hands. Washing hand is the key. And if you touch something, a patient, a surface a common surface like a doorknob, a coffee machine in a workplace, common surfaces that you think a lot of people come and touch that. So if you touch that, I would suggest you wash your hands, and before you touch your eyes and nose, that you wash your hands first. So that's one big precautions. Second, COVID virus does exist among animals. And I sent you a link today. I sent it to Dr. Manan. I sent a link from CDC that has lots of information for both of these questions about animal and exposure to human and vice versa. Okay, so please do read that. My only advice to you that if you have a pet like a cat and a dog or anything else, if it's not exposed to wild animal, then you should be okay. And every time you encounter a wild animal, I would suggest you wash your hand, or if you are symptomatic, I would suggest you wear a mask if you're coming close to an animal. My only other advice would be that stay away from wild animal, and also keep your pets away from wild animals, because it does exist there. The risk of transmission from animals to human is low, but it has happened. So there is some documented evidence, but it's not very common. So my advice to you is that if it's a domestic cat and your kids are just exposed to it, and they're playing with it, that's fine, as long as that cat is not exposed to wild animals or doesn't go in a wild farm. Or if your kid or family member has COVID positive, I would say then you should be isolating yourself and wearing a mask and not exposing others, whether it's an animal or not, or a human. You should not be coming in close contact with that. So that will be my answer to that.
Okay, थोड़ा सा ब्रेक पे जाते हैं. नोरमा, आप अपने पास क्वेश्चन रखिए. 30 सेकंड ब्रेक लेते हैं, वापस आते हैं, आप क्वेश्चन फिर करें. ओके, नोरमा, आप कहाँ से हैं और आपकी जो क्वेश्चन है डॉक्टर साहब से बात करें.
Assalamu alaikum everyone. So I have several questions. सबसे पहले तो मेरा जो ये question है कि understandably due to the fact that there are countries जिनके different mandates हैं about vaccines or travel restrictions. According to that, इसी reason की वजह से me and my husband we've been only looking for Pfizer doses because that was our first dose, and second dose or booster shots we were looking for Pfizer. But a lot of people that I've talked to, including my own physician, they said that there's no problem with Moderna. And then some people are saying that you shouldn't mix and match because you don't know what's in there. There are different vaccines, there are different vendors. So first and foremost, आपको opinion मुझे इस चीज़ पे चाहिए होगा कि what is your opinion about vaccine mixing, especially when you have had 2 initial Pfizer doses and the third one that you're finding is just Moderna. You're not finding Pfizer anywhere.
Thank you very much, Norma. Good questions, and I'm very happy to answer that. If you want, I can speak in Urdu or English, but I'll try first in English, and then I can talk to you in Urdu too, if you want more details. So first of all, there is more and more documented evidence on mix matching. So that is the best practice. And there is so much evidence that perhaps you get more robust immunity if you are mix and matching. Like, if you had initially Moderna and you got Pfizer or vice versa. That is the best approach currently in the available science and research, that mix and match does give you very robust immunity. So if you had Pfizer and you got a booster Pfizer, that's absolutely fine. If you had Pfizer 2 doses and you got a Moderna as a booster dose, that's absolutely fantastic, and vice versa. So don't worry about that. As long as you got 3 doses, but they are all mRNA vaccine, you are good. You are just good. You're safe. And yes, you're right. Countries are different. They have different way of recognizing or acknowledging which vaccine they accept. But now in Canada, and I heard in Pakistan too, and in many other countries, in India and others, World Health Organization recommended vaccine are acceptable in all countries. So even if your primary series was in India and you came here and you got mRNA vaccine, you are good. That will be, even if you enter US, they will accept that. So that mix and match is a world phenomena, and it's acceptable, it's acknowledgeable, and it's good. Don't worry about that. So that's a good practice. Was there anything that I didn't answer in your question?
No, that was pretty much just the confirmation that I needed, because most of the physicians that I've talked to, they corroborate with the same thing, that with the same narrative that robust immunity is seen, whether it's as long as it's an mRNA vaccine. My follow-up question would be for people in my age group, especially women. I have heard a lot of anecdotal questions about menstrual health and fertility health. Obviously, there's no documented or there's no research that I've found online. And as someone who's actually looking forward to starting a family pretty soon, I wanted your opinion. Not that I'm an anti-vaccine vax person, like I've gotten all of my doses and I will continue doing that. But what are some of the risks that I should know prior to going forward with starting a family?
Thank you so much, Narma. These are wonderful questions, and I'm glad you asked because this response will trigger perhaps further questions. So first of all, there is so much fake news and misinformation out there. And I had many town halls done with women, particularly indigenous women, and women in Canada, African women, Pakistani women, Pakhtun women. A lot of misinformation, a lot of fake news circulating. And there was like somebody in Britain, actually it was on BBC too, and BBC investigated those all those sort of rumors and misinformation. So first of all, I have to tell you that there is no documented evidence in the scientific world that vaccine administration would interfere with menstrual cycle or infertility. There is absolutely nothing. And whatever you're hearing or whatever is being circulated in social media is all fake news. So I would caution that nobody should share fake news unless you really 100% sure that's authentic news and from an authentic source. So there is no evidence whatsoever that it causes any interference with fertility or menstrual cycle. So that's number one. Number two, just a month ago, not even a month ago, maybe 3 weeks ago, there was a groundbreaking research came to light, and it was done by a lot of the top scientists in the world, that if a woman who is pregnant get the vaccine, mRNA vaccine particularly, the mom actually after birth, the mom transmit or transfer the antibodies to the baby that protect the baby for 6 months. So I said that in many town halls to people, and particularly to women who were very concerned about that. So that is the evidence that the vaccine is safe in pregnancy. And certainly you can plan your pregnancy the way you wish, but I'm pretty sure that people would make safer decisions. That vaccine does not interfere in any way with the development of the baby or neurological development of the baby or post-delivery impacts. I do suggest that, if anyone has any conditions, any high-risk conditions that you think that will perhaps put a risk for your pregnancy, that you talk to your doctor and just make it clear in your mind. Otherwise, I do not see any risk for anybody planning a pregnancy or thinking that way. So feel free to talk to your doctor and share your concern. And if you hear these news, and maybe I will send you some of the articles later that you can read for yourself and share with your friends and others, so they are really well educated on this topic.
Okay, Norma, any other question?
I have just 2 more questions, but there's one that's more on the forefront of my mind. That question is that I've been hearing a lot that Omicron is, it's not that severe, it's not that serious. But on the other hand, if you look at data from hospitals and the number of deaths and the number of people who are in basically emergency due to COVID, that has significantly increased. So I just wanted your opinion that should Omicron be taken less seriously, considering that a lot of people have been, again, giving an anecdotal review of the Omicron being a lot less deadly or a lot less lethal than what they expected it to be.
Yeah, and Norma, we talked about that earlier in the show. I did address this question, but just for your information, and maybe I'll just repeat some of those messages, that Omicron is mild infection so far based on all the data we reviewed last week, all the data that came from all the hospitals in Canada and US. So all the data from hospitalized patient in US and Canada was shared with us. And based on that data, there's a very clear evidence that the Omicron virus is 5 to 10 times more transmissible compared to Delta. And currently, 95% of all the cases of COVID are Omicron driven. So that is number one. The second interpretation we got from that hospitalization data is that it's, for majority of people, it's a mild infection, okay? But mild Omicron infection for me does not mean mild COVID infection for you or for your family or anyone who is around me. So I said that in the beginning of the show and last time when we talked about this, that Omicron mild for me doesn't mean Omicron mild for you. And particularly looking at people risk, if somebody has risk factors, if somebody is inadequately immunized, Omicron is 19% more deadlier for those people who are unvaccinated. They will be put in the hospital very quickly. And recovery is also very different in different people. So if you are a healthy person, you may come out of it like in a snapshot, and you may not feel much. But for a lot of people, elderly people with kidney, heart, liver conditions, immunocompromised, drug addictions, people on the street can be very deadly. So I would not say that people should think it's the joke and just think it like a flu and just get over it and you will be okay. No, I'm not saying that. I'm saying take it seriously. And there is a difference between this and flu. For both, we have vaccine and you can protect yourself. And particularly if you're inadequately immunized or no vaccination history and you have risk condition, it can really be deadly for people. So I'm just repeating that it should not be taken lightly.
Okay, thank you, Norma, for coming. We have short up time, so thank you so much. Thank you all of you, those who come and ask question. क्योंकि आखिर में अभी हमारे पास टाइम कम है, तो अभी कम्युनिटी को मैसेज देना है. सजाद भाई पहले आप मैसेज दे दे, फिर मायरा देगा कोई भी मैसेज आप जो भी दिल चाहे कम्युनिटी के साथ, पश्तून में दे, उर्दू में दे, दोनों लैंग्वेजेस में दे, इंग्लिश में दे. फिर आखिर में हम डॉक्टर इब्राहिम खान से मैसेज लेंगे, इंग्लिश में भी कहे कुछ अल्फाज और उर्दू में भी कहे, तीनों लैंग्वेजेस में कहे, पश्तून में, ताकि सारी कम्युनिटीज़ को पता चले, क्योंकि कनाडा डाइवर्स कंट्री है और हमारे पास लैंग्वेज की बड़ी स्ट्रेंथ है इधर, पख्तूनों की और उर्दू वाले लोगों की. सजाद भाई, और उसके बाद हम प्रोग्राम को एंड करेंगे. मायरा, सजाद भाई दोनों होस्ट, आपका बहुत बहुत शुक्रिया कि शॉर्ट नोटिस पे आप लोगों ने हमारे साथ हेल्प किया और इस प्रोग्राम को मतलब एक इंटेलेक्चुअल टच दिया. और डॉक्टर इब्राहिम खान, आपकी टाइम का, संडे का टाइम है, आपके आने का बहुत बहुत शुक्रिया. हम आपको कंटिन्यूली इनवाइट करेंगे. सजाद
बस अस्सलाम वालेकुम जमा पख्तनूर रोनो खुआंदो टो अस्सलाम वालेकुम. زه خو ډاکټر ابراهیم صاحب خو ډېر ښکلې خبرې وکړې او ډېر ښکلې تپوسونه مو شو، خو زیاتره په انګلیش کې و. دغه کې نو زه به د هغې د ډاکټر ابراهیم صاحب یو خلاصه غونډه کې پیش کړم خپلو ویورز ته، خپل وروڼو خویندو ته، پښتنو ته، ټول چې کوم سټیزن دي، فیلو سټیزن دي، ټول ته به زه دا ووایم په پښتو کې چې ډاکټر ابراهیم صاحب دا ووایي چې یاره اومیکرون چې دی دا هم یو ډېر خطرناک چې دی، دا آسان ماخلی او دا همغه شان دی خطرناک دی څنګه چې کوم مخکې ډلټا او یا چې کوم نور ویریانټس وو، نو هغه د هغې په رنګ دا هم خطرناک کیدی شي. نو دا سیریس اخلي او که تاسو امینو کمپرومایز دی یا تاسو صحت ټیک نه دی، نو د هغې دپاره خو بیا ډېر زیات خطرناک کیدی شي. نو ټیک ده چې دی وایي چې دا یو پوټی لکه زر لګي، لکه زیات انفیکشس دی، خو لکه خطرناک هم هغه یو شاته دی. نو زما ورونو خویندو ته هم دا پیغام دی چې همغه شان د احتیاط کوئ او همغه شان د سیریس واخلئ چې څنګه موږ نور اومیکرون دغه کړي نور ویریانټس موږ اخیستي. بل هغې دا خبره وکړه چې یاره تاسو لکه په کور کې پټ سي، لکه داسې پیشو وي، سپي وي که نه، نو تاسو که بیمار یې، تاسو ته کووډ شوي خدای مکه، نو تاسو د دغه پټس نه یا دغه ځناورو نه، پیشو نه، سپي نه که ځان وساتئ، نو ښه به یو هسې تاسو آیسولیشن پکار دی د نورو د فیملی ممبرز نه، د خپل د نور د ستاسو کوم خاندان کوم ماشومان دي، کوم نور ممبران دي، نو د هغې نه به هسې تاسو ځان ساتئ. نو هغې پکې دا پکې زما ډېر خبرې خوښې شوې. یو هغې د مونوکلونل یو انټي باډي تھراپي باندې خبره وکړه چې دا اویلیبل ده خو دا ارچا ته اویلیبل نه ده دا به یو خاص خلکو ته اویلیبل یو هغه به سټریکټلی د ډاکټرانو په مشوره باندې دا ملاویږي دا ارچا ته لا اویلیبل نه ده بل خبره زما په خیال اغي په د زنانو باره کې او په پریګننسي باره کې او چې دغه مواري باره کې دا او چې ویکسینیشن چې دی نو دا د باندې څه فرق نه غورځي ویکسینیشن په کار دی لازم په کار دی او بوستر هم په کار دی بلکې هغه دا وی چې کوم ماشوم پیدا شي دغه او کوم مور دغه ویکسینیشن کړي او ستنې والی نو هغه ماشوم ته د شپږو میاشتو پورې پروټیکشن یا حفاظت ملاوي دي شي نو دا ټول خبرې هغه دا و کې خو ټایم ډیر کم دی نورې خبرې مې یو کې خو زه به مختصرا ما دا یو څو چې کوم زما
مهرباني مایرا آپ کمیونٹی کو کوئی میسج دینا چاہے تو اپنے الفاظ میں کہہ دیں
میری طرف سے بہت زیادہ تھینک یو ڈاکٹر ابراہیم خان کا برادر سجاد کا بھی اور تھینک یو ڈاکٹر منان دس واز ویری انفارمیٹیو فار می کہ ایک بات جو بہت اچھی کی ہے کہ دیر از اے لاٹ آف فالس انفارمیشن اے لاٹ آف فالس ڈیٹا اور یوزلی جھوٹ جو ہے وہ زیادہ اونچا سنائی دیتا ہے بہت زیادہ نظر آتا ہے تو پلیز اپنی ریسرچ کریں کوالیفائڈ لوگوں سے سوال کریں ادھر ادھر آرٹیکلس یا وہ چیزیں نہ پڑھ کے ڈیسیجنس لیں اور یہ بہت لانگ ٹرم جیسے آئی تھنک شکولا یا کسی نے بھی سوال پوچھا تھا اس بیماری کے بہت لانگ ٹرم افیکٹس بھی ہیں جو ابھی ہمیں سمجھ نہیں آئے ہیں تو اس وجہ سے ویکسینس لیں اپنی ریسرچ کریں اور کوالیفائڈ لوگوں سے بات کریں کہ آپ خود بھی صحت مند رہیں اور اپنے ساتھ فیملی کو بھی سیف رکھیں تو گڈ ہیلتھ
آپ انگلش میں بھی میسج دے اور اردو میں بھی کہے اور پھر پشتو میں بھی کہے کیونکہ 3 زبانوں نے اللہ نے آپ کو 3 زبانوں کا اسٹرینتھ دیا ہوا ہے تو ہم چاہتے ہیں کہ کینیڈا میں ان لوگوں کو مطلب بینیفٹ ہو جو اردو کو نہیں سمجھتے یا پشتو نہیں سمجھتے تو 3 زبانوں میں آپ میسج دے بے شک وہ شارٹ کیوں نہ ہو Dr. Ibrahim Khan. And then we will end the program.
Thank you so much. First of all, I'll say in English and then Urdu and Pashto. Thanks so much for this amazing evening and for these wonderful questions and really great audience. I really love that. And we can do it again if you want. So first of all, my couple of tips for, take home messages, educate yourself and with an authentic source of information. Know your risk of your health individually, for your family, and for your community. If you are living in a place that vaccine accessibility is an issue, or your individual health has some risk factors, so know your risk really well. If you are just staying in town, or you're going out of town, or overseas, so you know your risk, you know your health. Get vaccine, get the 3rd dose, and for some there may be 4th dose. Protect yourself by taking all these precautions, vaccine, talking to your doctors, and if you have traveling plans for this summer, you better know where you're going. And if you're going to Mexico, to Pakistan, to India, or anywhere in the world, you know your risk and you have insurance plan in case you're stuck and those sort of things. So I will now say those messages in Urdu. بہت شکریہ ایک زبردست ایوننگ اور زبردست کوشچنز اور زبردست آڈینس. تھینک یو سو مچ. ہم دوبارہ یہ کر سکتے ہیں اگر دیر آر کوشچنز ان دی کمیونٹی. میرا سب سے پہلا ٹپ یہ ہے سب لوگوں کو کہ ایجوکیٹ یور سیلف. آپ کے انفارمیشن بہت اتھینٹک سورس سے ہونے چاہیے. ان کینیڈا, ہیلتھ کینیڈا, پبلک ہیلتھ ایجنسی آف کینیڈا, ورلڈ ہیلتھ آرگنائزیشن ان جنیوا, CDC اٹلانٹا, یہ ایسی جگہیں ہیں جہاں سے آپ کو ہمیشہ اتھینٹک انفارمیشن ملے گی اور فیک نیوز سے آپ بچ رہیں گے. آپ کو پتہ ہونا چاہیے کہ آپ کے اپنے انڈیویجول رسک کیا ہیں, آپ کے فیملی کے رسک کیا ہیں, کمیونٹی لیول کے رسک کیا ہیں, اور اسی طریقے سے پھر آپ نے اسٹیپس لینے ہیں. سب سے بیسٹ سلوشن یہ ہے کہ آپ ویکسین کے 3 ڈوزز لیں اگر آپ کینیڈا US میں ہیں, اور کچھ لوگوں کے لیے 4th ڈوز بھی انشاءاللہ آئے گا. یو کین پروٹیکٹ یور سیلف. اپنے آپ کو بچانا ہے آپ نے اپنے آپ کو, چاہے وہ فلو وائرس ہے, چاہے وہ کووڈ وائرس ہے یا اور بیکٹیریل انفیکشن ہے. اپنے آپ کو بچائیں, اپنی معلومات میں اضافہ کریں, اپنی ڈاکٹر سے اتنے کویشچن کریں جتنے آپ کی مرضی ہو, اور رسک اسسمنٹ کریں اپنے پلانس کی کہ آپ اگر اف یو پلاننگ ویکیشن سم ویئر تو آپ کو پتہ ہونا چاہیے آپ کہاں جا رہے ہیں, آپ کے انشورنس پلان اینڈ اکارڈنگلی آپ کے پاس پلانز موجود ہوں کہ بھائی اگر کوارنٹین ہوگی تو کیا کریں گے, अगर कोई बीमारी हुई तो उसके लिए क्या प्लान्स है, इंश्योरेंस है कि नहीं, इस तरह की चीज़ें सोचना चाहिए। तो बहुत बहुत शुक्रिया इस अपॉर्चुनिटी का, और अब मैं इंशाल्लाह इसको पश्तो में रिपीट ټولو ته ډیره مننه چې دومره ښکلې ماښامې او ارینج کو تاسو او دومره ښکلي کوېسچنز وکړو، دومره ښکلې آډینس ته تاسو ټولو ته ډیره مننه. د ټولو خویندو ته، ټولو وروڼو ته ډیره مننه. مونږ له دا قسم فورم نور پروموټ کول پکار دي چې خویندې او میندې ډیر ازادۍ سره او ډیر آرام سره کوېسچنز کولی شي د ډاکټر نه، او که ډاکټر یې که ډاکټر نه خو چې اټلیست دا کمفرټ لیول چې خلک کوېسچنز کولی شي and you feel safe. موږ له داسې ټایپ انوایرمنټ پکار دی چې زنانه، ماشومان، هر یو کس کوېسچنز کولی شي او هغه ته د هغه د جواب ملاویږي، او تر هغې پورې موږ نه ځو چې تر څو پورې موږ یې صحیح جواب نه ورکړی. نو دا مې ډېر خوښ شو ستاسو دا فورم چې څومره ځان انفارم ساتلی شي، د رایټ انفارمیشن، د کریکټ انفارمیشن، ټوله صحیح انفارمیشن. نن سبا هر چا سره 2-3 فونز دي، فیک نیوز ډیر زیات دي، غلط انفارمیشن خلکو ته ملاویږي او بیا خلک غلط ډیسیژنز کوي. نو خلک به صحیح ډیسیژن هله کوي چې خلکو سره کریکټ انفارمیشن وي، او کریکټ انفارمیشن به د کوم ځای نه راځي د هغې ما الریډي تاسو ته منشن کړل، لکه CDC اټلانټا شو، ورلډ هیلث ارګنایزیشن شو جنیوا، یا دلته کې پبلک هیلث ایجنسی اف کینیډا، هیلث کینیډا، دا ټول اتھنټک سورسز دي. دینه تاسو خپل انفارمیشن اغوستی شي. پاکستان کې کو سوچ کوي، پاکستان نېشنل علاقه چې کوم هیلث ډپارټمنټ دی هغې نه تپوس کولی شي، خپل ډاکټرانو نه تپوس کولی شي. ویکسین واحد یو داسې لاره ده چې هغې باندې به انشاءالله دا پینډمیک ختمیږي. چا دپاره 3 ډوزه دي، چا دپاره به 4 ډوزه وي، او د هغې دپاره تاسو خپل ډاکټر سره هر وخت چې خپل ډاکټر ته ځئ نو ځان له لیست جوړوئ د کوېسچن چې کوم کوېسچنز به کوئ او څنګه به کوئ. ډاکټر له مخکې نه وارننګ ورکوئ چې زه راځم، زه به درنه دا کوېسچن کوم او تا له پکار چې تا سره زما دپاره جواب وي. تاسو ته پته دلته کې د ډاکټرانو پریکټس ډېر بل شانتې دی. ډاکټر پیشنټ ته، ډاکټر لاندې دی، مریض بره دی. نو دلته کې دا ټایپ پروفیشنل انټیګریټي دا او پروفیشنل کانډکټ دی چې د به مریض اله د کلینیک نزدیک چې ته د مریض د هر سوال جواب ورکړي. نو دغه ټایپ اټیچیوډ ساتئ. هر ډاکټر نه چې څومره ډېر تپوسونه کولی شي کوئ، او که ډاکټر تنګېږي که خوشحالېږي، تاسو خپل کوېسچنز کوئ، تاسو خپل انفارمیشن اخلئ، او نه صرف ځان باره کې بلکې د خپل فیملی باره کې. ځینې کې دا بله داسې په فیملی کې خلک چې د هغې ته دا اپورچونټي نه ملاویږي چې لاړ شي ډاکټر نه تپوس وکړي. نو یو آر د ایډوکیټ فور دیم. لکه داسې مشره ښځه په فیملی کې که نه، نو تاسو هغې لپاره کولی شي چې هغې او پراپر هیلث اسسمنټ چې کوم ملک ته ویکیشن لځئ یا فیملی لځئ پاکستان کې، کوشش کوئ چې نن سبا انډور ډېر نه یئ، زیاتر آوټ ډور ډېر ښه دی، ځکه چې کلاو هوا، کلاو سپیس او هوایی نو په هغې کې بریدنګ او د ریسک اف ټرانسمیشن از لو. نو کوشش کوئ چې آوټ ډور یئ، انډور ډېر نه یئ. که جنازې له لاړ شئ، که جومات ته لاړ شئ، پلیز ویر ا ماسک او ځان پروټیکټ کوئ. او که فرض که کوم ځای ډېر خلک ټوخېږي دی نه کوشش کوئ چې لرې یئ. ټولو ته ډېره مننه او سلامونه.
Dr. Manan, आपका mic off है.
Okay, so thank you so much. My mic was up. That's good that I didn't interfere, Dr. Ibrahim Khan, when he was talking. So thank you so much, Dr. Ibrahim Khan. Thank you so much, Myra, Malik. Thank you, Sajjad, Ahmad. फिर अगले संडे को एक नए टैलेंट के साथ, नए टॉपिक के साथ मिलेंगे इंशाल्लाह. अल्लाह सबको अपने अमान में रखे, हिफाजत में रखे. अल्लाह हाफिज़.